Hello, everyone. Welcome. If you would like, use the chat and let us know where you're tuning in from. And then Olaiya and Klancy will be able to see that. And it's so fun to know where everyone is from. And we'll get started in a few minutes, or a few seconds. Hello, everyone. Finny Ridge, hello. Welcome. Wallingford, hi, Aaron. All right, we are going to go ahead and get started. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I'm Laura Hamilton. I have a cookbook shop in Fremont called Bleu, and we typically do lots of author talks and cooking classes in our kitchen in the shop. We have taken those events to Zoom for the time being. And the great thing about that is that it allows us to welcome authors and just sort of decide that we want to have conversations with interesting people who have forthcoming projects, like our author tonight, Klancy Miller. Klancy is a New York-based writer who has a cookbook called Cooking Solo, and she is also the creator and editor-in-chief of For the Culture magazine, which will be coming out sometime in the future. It'll be a surprise, but it's coming. And you'll be able to get that directly from Klancy on the For the Culture website or at the Booklarder website. We will be carrying it as well down the road. Cooking Solo, however, is available on our website. It's a really fantastic, I think Olaiya in one of her Instagram posts called it sort of the pandemic perfect cookbook. If you're someone who's been spending more time by yourself or maybe just with one other person, it is full of wonderful ideas for treating yourself well with your meals. You deserve a good meal, even if it's just you. So, and Klancy's book is really, really wonderful. She is going to be in conversation with Olaiya Land, who is a longtime friend of Booklarder and is the creator and editor of the website Lionesse. And we are delighted to partner with Olaiya to bring Klancy to Zoom for you all this evening. They are going to leave time for questions. So if you could please use that Q&A button in Zoom to ask questions, that allows them to just be a little more organized and you can sort of talk to each other in the chat. All right, I think that's all I have. So please welcome Klancy Miller and Olaiya Land.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. How's it going?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Doing good. Good. I am so excited to have this talk. I've been looking forward to this all week. But before we get into anything, I feel like pandemic, like everybody is just feeling like shit. So I always try to let people know, like whenever I think they're doing something amazing. So in addition to all of your amazing work that we're going to get into, I have to say you are looking like fabulous. Like seriously, like pandemic glow up is so real.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I kind of took a mini nap before our talk. So I think
love it.
That might have helped. Threw on some earrings and yeah. So I'm semi-rested.
I love it. This is the year I have been embracing the nap. So I'm feeling it.
Totally.
Before we get into talking about your cookbook and For the Culture magazine, I always like to ask people when I'm doing these talks to have them just tell a little bit about themselves, because I think, I don't know, whenever I see people who are doing cool stuff, I always like to know, how did you get here? What was your path? And yours has been like so inspiring. So you went to Colombia and you did development work in French Polynesia. And then you're like, oh, I'm just going to go study pastry at the Cordon Bleu. And then let me pivot and write this cookbook right quick. And now I'm doing this like groundbreaking magazine. So we want to know more. So tell us about, like, what did you study at Colombia? Where in French Polynesia were you? What kind of development work were you doing? Let's throw it all the way back.
Okay. Yay. Okay. You did a nice summary. So at Columbia, I majored in history, but I've always been, looking back, it all makes sense. I've always been a person who has like a million different interests, or at least a dozen strong interests at any given time. And so I majored in history, but I also studied French. I studied Arabic. I kind of concentrated in African American history. But I also was really interested in the Middle East. So there was like also a strong concentration in Middle Eastern history. And I'm a film buff. And there was quite a long period of time when I thought I wanted to be a film writer, like a screenwriter. So I took a lot of film classes too at Columbia. And so I had no idea what I wanted to do. But I was really into film. I was into language. And I wanted to figure out, when it came time for me to look for a job, I wanted to figure out how can I find a way to apply some of the things I've learned in a job. And so I ended up getting work at a non-governmental organization. I started out as an intern, and then I got to work there like as a job. And it kind of like allowed me to use a little bit of my Arabic and French. I was studying like I was in the Middle Eastern department, specifically doing research on Palestinian refugees. And so that I don't know, I felt like I was using some part of my brain from college. But in the meantime, I knew that I had no idea what I wanted to do. So I started taking classes outside of work, like on the weekends or after work. I took film editing classes. I took a class on how to make documentaries. I took dance classes, acting classes, and cooking classes. And the cooking classes were really the most interesting to me. And so then I ended up getting an apprenticeship at a restaurant in Philly, which is where I was after college. I got an apprenticeship at Fork Restaurant on the weekends, and I loved it. I was basically a prep cook, and I would come in and do some of the prep for their brunch. And it was just the coolest thing for me. It was the first time I started showing up to work on time, because I was really bad with being on time for a long time. And I felt really motivated. And I also knew that I wanted to go to school for something. I was all over the place. I wanted to be a millionaire before the age of 26.
All right.
Wow, I had no idea what I wanted to do, but I was like, I want to be really rich, very young and very rich. So I was like, how do I do it? Get an MBA. So like I applied, and I only applied to Wharton, which is hilarious. Like apply to the best business school without a clue. I didn't get in, but I knew I wanted to go to school. So when I was apprenticing at this restaurant, I asked the chef about her opinion on going to culinary school. And she's like, you actually don't need it if you are trying to work in restaurants or you want to work your way up the ladder. However, if you're interested in pastry, I would consider it. And so that was a light bulb moment, because I have a sweet tooth. I had been thinking about Le Cordon Bleu. Like I knew Le Cordon Bleu existed. And for me, Le Cordon Bleu was in Paris. So I was like, yeah, I get to be in Paris. I get to speak French. I get to like learn pastry. That's kind of the ideal package for me at the time and still now. So yeah, that's kind of what led me to Paris. But before I got to Paris, I did do like a stint. I did a 3-month stint or 4-month stint in Tahiti in French Polynesia. And that was amazing. It was a part of I had switched to a different department in the NGO where I was working. And so it was part of their they had like a nuclear non-proliferation program. And at the, like, Tahiti had been a testing site for France for nuclear weapons. And that had stopped. And so I went there to kind of do a bit of a study on what was the impact of that, like the socioeconomic impact of that. And I was working with an NGO there that was partnered with the NGO I was at in the States. And so that's how that happened. But that was kind of like a really magical experience that was like a blip on the screen in terms of like, it has no relationship to really a lot of the work we did, but it was.
Yes, but like the thing that like I love about this story is that it just shows, I think it's really inspiring. Like when I graduated college, I had what am I doing? What do I want to do? I don't know. I love food. I like this. I like that. Like so many of us graduate and don't have any idea what we want to do. And I love that it really highlights the idea that you don't have to like study X, Y, or Z to have a successful career path, that you can just, I love how after school you just like explored your interests. Like I'm going to take film classes and dance classes and cooking classes, and just like, I think that's so important, that time, you know, whether it's out of college or even later, if you want to switch careers, that time of just like taking the time to explore and find out what you're really passionate about, or what really like clicks with you, or how can I integrate all these different parts of my interests and myself into my career. So I think it's awesome.
Thanks. Yeah. I kind of decided to think of it as an adventure because, and I'm glad I did, because there were moments when I felt probably critical of myself, but I'm glad that I chose to be a little bit adventurous and to have that mindset, because I think it's very easy to feel like I finished school, I have to have it all figured out. And I definitely didn't. So I just kind of went with, the goal is to figure it out, as long as there's no time limit. And I feel like that's also life,
Yes. I mean,
Yeah.
I love that. I mean, some people like, they're like, I'm going to study this and go do this, and that's great. But I think sometimes you can have a much richer experience. And I have no doubt that plays, having had this like multitude of experience, plays into your ability to do the work that you do now across platforms, and as an editor and a writer and like a kind of a community organizer. But we'll come back to that when we talk about the magazine. Before we get into that, I want to ask about studying at the Cordon Bleu really quick. So when you were doing your pastry program there, what was it like? Was it like, We Chef, like one of those crazy, like were chefs throwing like pots and pans like on TV, or was it like, what was it like?
It was really, I have to tell you, it was a 9-month program, and they organize a stage for you, an apprenticeship that's like 3 months. So all told, it's basically a year-long experience. And it was a fairy tale for me. It was very dreamy. So I was only doing pastry. At Le Cordon Bleu, you can do the Grand Diplôme, which is cuisine plus pastry, or cuisine plus pâtisserie. Or you can just do cuisine or pastry. I wanted to do pastry. And so the way they organize it is, every like program is divided into the basic level, then you move on to the intermediate level, and then superior level. But regardless of the level, everything is built in or divided into demonstration, where you watch it's like a lecture for pastry. You watch the chef make a thing. It could be a forêt noire, or I think that was the first thing we learned the first day of class. We watched the chef prepare a forêt noire, and he walked us through every single detail of it and explained everything you possibly could, including the history behind like the forêt noire. And then at the end, like we all ran up and like took pictures of his confection. And then we had our pratique, which is the practical class, and we would attempt to make what the chef had just shown us. And it was really fun. Like, it was really fun to have your lecture be all about making food, and then for the classwork to be you making that thing you just learned about. and then to like walk out with like a cake or, you know, like, I don't know, 40 croissants or something, whatever it is, like a tarte tatin, or it could, I mean, we did a whole bunch of different things. We did sugar sculptures. So it was really fun to learn how to make things that I've always enjoyed, and then also to learn things that I've never made. And then to feel like, oh, I can make this, like, and to do that every single day was really magical. And to, like, for me as a true sweet tooth person, it was just like, oh my gosh, I get to have every single day focused on dessert. Like that is, I think the day before, I remember, I think the night before I took my flight to Paris to go to Le Cordon Bleu, I think I had a dream that I was a piece of cake, and it was the happiest dream. I was so happy. And so that truly was like a good omen, and kind of like the whole vibe of my studying there. Like every day I get to eat cake, or I mean, it wasn't necessarily cake, but you know what I mean?
Every day you get to eat sweets in Paris. So
Yeah.
that's not a bad life.
Yeah. And that was my homework. Like the homework was go to pastry shops and see how they prepare their vitrine, go and eat a tarte tatin, go and like find your favorite croissant or pain au chocolat, or, you know, whatever it is, like go experience it so you can understand what it's supposed to be, how good it can be, like develop your eye, develop your palate. So it was really fun to have a course of study that was all about basically educating my senses. You know what I mean? And so that was truly like a really beautiful, very pleasure centered experience that made me extremely happy, and so happy that I fell in love with Paris and I mean, I was already in love with Paris, but I fell deeper into love and decided I wanted to stay there. After I had my stage, and I got another stage at a Michelin-starred restaurant, Taïwan, which was great because the stage I got after Le Cordon Bleu it seemed really nice because it was like a cute little salon d'été in a very posh neighborhood in the 16th, but it was super dodgy and super like everybody was unhappy. Nobody had been paid for, these people were working hard hours. And I think people hadn't been paid for 3 months or 6 months, something crazy. The owner of the place got arrested on the premises. Like it was a very kind of bizarrely shady place. So it was very exciting to be able to get a stage at like a fancy 3-star restaurant that like was proper.
And how long did you stay in Paris total?
4 years.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
That is what a beautiful experience to have. Love it.
Yeah, it was awesome. I mean, the fairy tale part was definitely in the beginning, because when I started working there, it was like, oh, reality, you know, like working person in most places comes with highs and lows. So, but overall, it was an amazing time.
I love it.
Yeah.
And so then how did you get from there to cooking solo? What was the path to your cookbook?
It's actually a rather long path. I came back, I really wanted to do a book about my time in Paris. I wanted to do a lot. I wanted to get a magazine job. I came back. So that's, I guess, one of the dots linking the two. When I came back to the States, I did a very large round of informational interviews. And I reached out to, well, also I should backtrack. At a certain point, I realized that I probably wasn't going to be a pastry chef in a professional kitchen full time. Like at a certain point in my stage at Taïwan, I was trying to get from stage to having a job, and they kind of weren't hiring. And the chef was like, you're great, but you're a little slow in the kitchen. And I was like, but this is me at top speed. This is me. Like, I'm working as fast as I can. And a job opened up at Le Cordon Bleu, actually, in their recipe development department. I needed money, so that, and a job. So that was like a fortuitous thing. I was fortunate to get that job, which allowed me to stay in Paris. And that kind of opened up the world of learning how to write recipes, because I knew I wanted to be in the world of food. I at that point realized it might not be as like a pastry shop owner or whatever. And yeah, so I come back to the States and I started this round of informational interviews, reaching out to a whole bunch of people from like food writers for the New York Times, editors at Food and Wine magazine, and each person would kind of introduce me to somebody else. So I had Amanda Hesser was generous and kind enough to take me out to breakfast, and we had a lovely talk, and she told me all about her background, and she's like, oh, you should talk to so and so and so and so. So the next person who she introduced me to recommended that I consider ghostwriting for cookbooks. So that was something I had never even really thought about or even knew about. So she introduced me to her agent. I go to meet with her agent, and her agent immediately tells me about a project she thinks I would be good for. And so literally like hands me a project to potentially ghostwrite. In order to do that, I had to sign on with her as my agent. So like right out the gate, I was able to get a literary agent. And so the project that she initially gave me didn't work out in terms of ghostwriting, but I did end up doing some ghostwriting for another chef. And also I ended up, one of the editors I spoke to for one of the informational interviews was like, oh, you should consider food PR, like doing PR for a restaurant, just as a way to, she's like, all the magazine jobs are taken, people stay in them often for a really long time. But if you just want to move back to New York and get your foot in the door, consider food PR. So then I got introduced to a whole bunch of food PR people, and I actually ended up doing freelance food PR for Thomas Keller's Bouchon for like a stint of time. That allowed me to get back into New York. And then I was doing a supper club with a friend, my good friend Roz. I was really trying to do the whole freelance writing thing. I was doing a number of things. I basically had 3 to 4 jobs at all times.
So basically you came back to New York and you really had your hustle on.
Pretty much. It's been on ever since.
But I love that step of like just going. I hope like people are taking notes. Anybody who's interested in like switching careers or like getting into a culinary field, that step of like taking the time to do those informational interviews sounds like it was like priceless in the connections that you made. And you're very good at that. Like you reached out to me on Instagram like a couple of years ago when you were in Seattle, and we just met up, and ever since I've been following you. So anyway, that's like part of your superpower.
Thanks. Well, I think that's one of my favorite things, because like I admire so many people. Like I admired you, and I was like, she's in Seattle. Let's see if I can meet people in real life who I admire on the internet.
But that's so powerful. I mean, like the Instagram, like I have this total love-hate relationship with Instagram because life sucking and the algorithm and this and that. But like if you can manage to take it into a space where you can make real contacts, it can be absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
And I have no doubt that that's like part of the connections that you've made for the culture. Have they come through this kind of like informational interviews and just reaching out to people on social?
Yeah. So yes, I think, how did that, I feel like I never answered the question about how cooking solo happened, but I'm going to answer this question. I'll answer it. I feel like, how have I been able to use that superpower? Yes. And mostly yes, because basically there are a lot of people who I knew I wanted to involve who I basically feel like I met through Instagram. So there's that base level. There definitely was kind of a first, this project came about because, excuse me, another publication had asked me to guest edit a Black issue, like Black women's issue, which I found intriguing. And I started reaching out to a whole bunch of people. And unfortunately, that didn't go forward. But to your point, I had reached out to all these people and I had established, I don't want to say that I had established a rapport, but when I start a conversation, more often than not, I like to continue it. So I felt like, well, I don't want to drop the ball on this conversation that I started. And I actually think it's a great idea. And I would actually like to do it. And I maybe want it to, I feel like it's bigger than a guest editing one issue thing. Like, I feel like it deserves its own platform. And I feel like Black women deserve much more kind of coverage than just one issue. So it started from a number of conversations. And then, it kind of grew from there, basically.
Okay, I want to hear about more about this, but I did lead you off topic. So tell us, how did you come to cooking solo? And then we'll come back to For the Culture.
Oh, sure. So cooking solo, basically, there's so many dots to connect, but like I said, I wanted to write a food memoir about my time in Paris. I wanted to be like part memoir, part like recipe book. I wrote a book proposal. It got rejected by 30 different publishers. I was sad, but then I got another project to work on. And then it was like a ghostwriting project. And then like, I realized I actually am not a fan of ghostwriting for myself. Like other people are great at it, but I don't really enjoy it. And so I realized I actually would like to write my own thing. And right when I was having that kind of realization, the US Census had come out saying that for the first time, there were more single people than married people. And by single people, literally 18 and up, not married. And I just felt like, oh, wow, that's confirmation that there are a lot of single people. And I feel like we need our own cookbook. So, because there are a lot of people who probably would like to cook, and every cookbook serves 4, serves 6, serves 8. And I don't really like leftovers. And even though I love going to restaurants and dinner parties in the before times, I also like to cook for myself. And that's something I had started doing in Paris. So that's like one link. And it's where I basically lived on my own for the first time. So I kind of had developed a whole bunch of recipes that I made on the regular. And then fast forward, I was just like, okay, there's an audience. I'm going to try to sell this concept based on the fact that there's an audience and there's a need, in my opinion. And so that's how it came about.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
And just, I want to make sure, I don't want to run out of time to talk about For the Culture. So
sure.
I do want to start talking about that now. So you told us a little bit about kind of how the idea, you were going to like do this one-off edition and that didn't work out, but you'd already like kind of reached out to other people. So like, when did it kind of solidify in your mind that you wanted to do this? Did you launch at the beginning of 2020, like right before the pandemic?
I launched the crowdfunding. So this was an idea that had been with me for easily 2 years. And then at a certain point, I realized I need to, I had another cookbook idea that didn't work out. I think I was trying to sell that cookbook last summer. It didn't happen. And so I was like, okay, fine. That just means it's the perfect timing. That just literally opens up space and time for me to focus on this idea that's been with me for the culture. So I realized I wasn't going to spend any of my personal money on it. Also because, like it's kind of a lot of money. So I decided to do a crowdfunder, and I launched that literally this week, a year ago.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it's like your 1 year that you've been working on it.
Yay.
But before we talk about it, like I'm so grateful for you for like sharing this whole story, because like from the outside, what you see, like if you go to like look at the Cooking Solo website, it's like, here's this beautiful woman and she went to Colombia and she lived in Paris and cooked in Paris, and she wrote a cookbook, and now she's doing this amazing kind of groundbreaking journal, which all of these things are true, but it's so, I think, important for us to see like what's behind that. Like I love hearing about like, well, I was going to launch this cookbook project, but like 30 publishers rejected it, and just to show like how much hustle it takes, what's going on behind the scenes, like all the work that you've put in and the way you kind of like built all these projects. I don't know, I find that very like gratifying to see like what's behind all the success.
Thanks. Yeah. And also like we're doing writing that is not food centric. Like I never talk about my writing that pays my bills. Like, you know what I mean? Like I literally am always juggling more than one thing. So it's also, cause I'm always like, how does anybody pay for their life? Like, how is everybody living? And I'm just like, I wear 3 different hats. Like and I'm public about my food hat. Like that is my most public self. But yeah, I agree. Like we never hear about, I don't want to say failures, but failures, like the failed efforts. And I definitely have had those. Like,
well, and like in this perspective, it's so clear from the outside, like how they can lead to the right thing, like, so this project didn't work out, and then the other one-off edition didn't work out, but now like there's something even greater, like it's going to be a whole magazine that is going to go forward and have more than one edition, and the moment in time is like so perfect for this. Like,
yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah.
So, I'm glad. Yeah.
Tell us a little bit, for people who don't know about For the Culture, tell us more about what is it, what's the idea, what's going to be in it?
Okay, so For the Culture is a magazine celebrating Black women and femmes in food and wine. And the idea of it is that all of the stories, all of the photography, all of the illustrations will be by Black women and femmes in food and wine, about Black women in food and wine. And the goal of it is to basically to highlight our experiences, our expertise, the women on whose shoulders we stand, and to give us our perspective. And it could be about something as simple as making deviled eggs. It could be something as radical as a call to action about having Black-owned cooperatives and changing the food industry through launching cooperatives as opposed to more sole owner restaurants, etc. But the idea is for it to be a platform for Black women's voices in the hospitality world. And so the first issue, initially, I did a call for submission. We had a successful, or I say we, I'm one person who launched the crowdfunder, but I like to say we because it's like, I don't know, to share it because
it's a community. It's the community now.
Yeah, a lot of people are making this happen. But we successfully raised $40,000 to launch the first issue, which felt amazing. And initially I thought, okay, I feel like the first issue should be on the theme of it's personal, because in many ways this is a personal project. Like it comes from a personal place for me. And I think it resonated with so many people because to be seen or to not be seen is personal. You know what I mean? Like one takes it personally if you don't see it yourself reflected in media. So that was the initial theme when I put out the call for submissions. And that was in February. Then the pandemic happened, and you know, within weeks or easily within the first month, we started to see that, okay, this pandemic in this country is disproportionately affecting Black and brown people. And
Yes.
it is decimating the food industry, like just right off the bat. And so I thought, okay, there needs to be also space to highlight what's happening. And so that's kind of the I put out a second call for admissions saying, like, you know, open to stories about how COVID-19 is affecting you or your business, or, you know, COVID-19 related stories within the food world, within Black communities. So the first issue has kind of a mix of both personal essays and just about food and food experiences, and then also kind of COVID related content. And there are definitely a ton of personal essays. At first, I was like, oh, there should be more reported pieces. But then I thought, using that theme of it's personal and having this first issue that is, well, the whole magazine is dedicated to Black women. But I was like, oh, that actually feels really profound to have a number of personal essays from Black women. Like, that's how, there's almost no better format than to be able to just share all of yourself. You know what I mean?
Yes. Actually, as you're talking about it, I'm like sitting over here, like getting chills. Like it's
Oh,
just, it's so important. I did a talk last week with Hawa Hassan about
yay.
in Bibi's Kitchen, and she's so lovely. And one of the things I love about her book is the idea of letting the Bibis, really having the grandmothers that she interviews from these 8 African nations tell their own stories in their own words. It's like,
Totally.
it seems like maybe a small act or like goes under the radar, but it's actually revolutionary. First of all, to have work that centers exclusively on Black women is like already huge. And then second of all, to just hear these women's stories, that's something that we don't hear enough in film, in literature, in especially in the food world, right? So it's huge, like it's so important. And I'm so grateful that you're doing this work. I think it's amazing. And then
Hey,
also drawing this attention to the way that COVID-19 is impacting restaurants, impacting like color communities of color, but also restaurants, like to shine more light on that. Like we really need that, because like I know a lot of people in the food scene here in Seattle, and people are like, okay, we've got like maybe 3 more months and then we're going under, maybe 5 more months and we're going under, or people are like mortgaging their house, they're selling their houses, like people are, it's just decimating the food community. So shedding light on that also, I think, is like so important. I think this is one of these projects that is just like, now is the right time. Like we need these stories. I want to hear these stories. I'm very excited.
thank you. Thank you. I have to say, I do feel like I feel honored, like reading all of these essays, personal essays, all of these stories, poems. It's very it's an honor and a privilege, because they are truly stories and perspectives that I think are not often shared, and they are really powerful and
I,
illuminating.
absolutely. And I guess this leads me to my next question, and a question that I asked Hawa also. I'm very curious about your experience as a Black woman in the food industry, which is, you know, especially in the restaurant industry, traditionally dominated by white men. And then I think also food publishing. So like, have you felt like when you were pitching your cookbook or working on your cookbook or just having the concept for this magazine, do you feel like there was pushback or you were well received? Or I'm just curious to know kind of what's your experience been?
I think on the one hand, I have felt very fortunate, because I I live in New York, which I do think is helpful for the food media world. And I am lucky that I have built a lot of relationships over the years. And in the beginning, it was kind of like, I'm an admirer, you know, like
Mm-hmm.
I'm a fan. And then, you know, over the years, I've been able to work with people who I once just kind of saw from a distance, or, you know, get invited to a dinner or something. So in that way, I feel fortunate. The thing that is a little weird or uncomfortable, and at this point, we're talking about the before times when we could all be in rooms together, is to frequently find myself either as like the only Black person, or like how, and I always joke because we're frequently in the same rooms and she's like the other one. And so like on the one hand, it's like, I like to be invited everywhere, and I like literally, I like invitations. And I'm a social butterfly and I like people. So I like being out and about, and I appreciate the relationships I have, but it is weird to be a Black person and to constantly, it's not weird to be a Black person. It's weird to be the only Black person, or like one of 3 or one of 5. And it's just like, y'all can't do any better.
Yes.
You know, like you really, for real. Cause like, whatever, we're all sensitive people. We all come from different worlds, blah, blah, blah. But it's like, cause I don't even have a quota, but I'm like, I have friends from everywhere. How do you not have, you know what I mean? Like, how is this not hitting you? How is it not like so obvious? Like, this room is too white, you know?
Yes.
Like,
I'm glad to hear you talking about that. I just think this message cannot be out there enough. And this actually leads me to my next question, which was, how do you feel like these currents of 2020, of the pandemic, of this kind of surge in Black Lives Matter, in kind of, do you feel like there's been more of an opportunity for you to talk to people about these issues, maybe for people to think about like, oh, maybe I do need to be like supporting and reading this magazine. I'm not Black, but maybe this is for me, or I can learn something here, or I'm supporting of this cause. Do you feel like 2020 has kind of, how do you feel like it's impacted your mission and for the culture, or do you feel like it's impacted it?
I feel like, I feel really, you know, I have a lot of feelings. On the one hand, I feel like extremely fortunate and lucky and grateful that For the Culture has gotten a lot of attention, a lot of positive attention. And I think there's a lot of goodwill towards it from many different people and places. I definitely feel like some of the attention it's gotten is because of the themes of 2020. And that's great. The attention is great. Likewise for Cooking Solo, I have also, if I'm being really honest, I have felt this year, specifically over the summer, like right after the murder of George Floyd, I have found this a deeply exhausting year. And the whole, like the attention and like we have to get it right, you know, that's a good thing. And I have absolutely benefited from it. And I feel like, and I'm grateful, but it's also exhausting to have people like all of a sudden really interested. And it's great, but it's also like, I've been here all along, you know, like, and it's not just me, it's literally every Black person, it's every Black and brown, it's like, we have, none of us were born 6 months ago, you know what I mean? Like, we're all of age and we've all been doing work. So it's great to have the work receive the attention. I feel nothing but gratitude, but it's also like, oh my gosh, just like relax a little, or not relax, but like try to, I don't know. I don't actually have a directive. I just know that for me, I have benefited from it, but I have also been actually quite intentional about not being able to respond to every ask. You know what I mean? Because I feel like the asks went up over the summer and following the summer. And some asks are really interesting. And frankly, they're strategic and they're helpful. You know what I mean? And I'm genuinely interested, but sometimes it's like, oh my gosh, so much, it's like people are playing catch up,
Mm.
and it's like, I want you to catch up, but I can't personally give all of the energy to help you catch up. And I feel like a lot of Black and brown people feel that way. Like, yes, catch up, but also let me rest.
Yes, yes,
You know?
such an important theme. And like I've seen you and a lot of Black and brown people on Instagram talking about this. And I know I feel this personally, like this desire to like, yes, I want you to be woke. I want you to think about these things. Yes, I want you to be involved in these areas and with creators and entrepreneurs that you haven't engaged with before. But on the other hand, like I can't like educate you constantly. So I think it's something really important to call attention to. And I think it depends a little bit also on who you're following on Twitter, on Instagram, on your social media feeds, like whether you see this content of like people also have work to do. Yes, support these people, support these Black and brown creators, businesses, entrepreneurs, but then also there's work that needs to be done on your own without like burdening people of color to help you be woke, you know? So
Exactly.
I definitely feel that.
Yeah.
I think it's
Yeah,
important to talk about.
totally. Yeah.
I wanted to ask what are some of, so you talk about personal essays and kind of the COVID related content that for the culture. And I saw on the For the Culture Instagram that you have like such a beautiful range of people that you're talking to, like farmers, like Black farmers, Black, like who is the lawyer turned baker who won the America's, what is her name?
Oh yeah, I'm trying to blank.
Valerie Lomas,
Yes.
who's a lawyer
Yes.
turned
Yeah.
baker, who won the Great American Baking Show.
Totally.
Gabriel Etienne, who's the Black farmer, who's like representing Black farmers in North Carolina.
Yeah.
Allison Summer, who's in wine, different Black chefs, talking
Totally.
about their experience in the food industry. And for me, what I love is this diversity of voices of the experience from all these different corners of the food world. So
Yeah.
is that kind of what we can hope to see in For the
Yes.
Culture?
Yeah. So there's I'm without unveiling too much, there's definitely, very excited about a wonderful interview with a Black woman winemaker in the first issue. We've definitely got a farmer, we've got herbalists,
Oh, that's cool.
people working with herbal medicine. We've got, as well as like one woman who does incredible work with cannabis. We've got an incredible, like, kind of a photo essay family story focused on a trip to Ethiopia. A young woman's like first trip. It's a big family trip to Ethiopia. So like a whole family kind of reunion story around food, and like told basically through all the things she ate and cooked while in Ethiopia. So kind of like a travel food story on the continent. As well as recipes from like South Carolina, some really interesting, like and it's also diasporic. So that I didn't mention before. So there are pieces that represent the American South, that represent Nigeria, that represent the Caribbean, that represent East Africa. How was interviewed in it as well.
Yay.
So I'm very excited about that. So everything from food bloggers to farmers to winemakers to, like I said, herbalists to bakers. So the idea is really to have as wide a variety as possible of fields within the food world, you know?
Clancy,
So
I am so excited for this. Like just hearing you talk about it, like it's just got me like jazzed. I can't wait to see it.
yay.
Before we get into, I want to leave time. We have a couple questions here, but before we get into those, I just wanted to ask you, I always like to ask about people's experience. What so far has been the hardest part about putting For the Culture together?
2020. Like, it's so funny. I I was at the Charleston Food and Wine Festival right before the pandemic was called a pandemic, or maybe like, I don't know, basically right before New York City shut down. I was in Charleston for this food festival. And I guess we all knew things were about to shut down. And I remember speaking with Carrie Diamond. She's like, oh gosh, Clancy, like this is going to be a hard time to launch something. And I'm like, what? We're going to be in our houses.
It'll be
And
fine.
yeah, like I am on my computer all the time anyway. And what I did not anticipate is that we were talking about this pre-show, but like this year has taken such an impact just on my thinking. Like I feel like I'm constantly processing, and especially I'd say within the first 3 to 6 months, frankly, the whole year, but really to realize like those first 4 months to realize like we are in a pandemic, people are dying. And then there's the personal level of hearing about friends or family members or, you know, and worrying about yourself. And like, so I didn't have any way there. I didn't imagine what this year would be like. I had no way to know how living in a pandemic affects you, like, and makes you kind of basically feel off of your game, and like the leveling of anxiety, like all of the emotional turmoil that you go through. And then it's like, and I'm supposed to be productive and like make something.
Yes, it's very real. I'm glad you're talking about it, because like it's really become concrete to me how just the base level of like dealing with isolation, concern for people that you love, concern for yourself, like the political shit show that this year has been, Black Lives Matter, like all of this, like it, like if this is your tank, it takes up like the bottom, like 30%, 40%, 50%, who knows, is spent just like dealing with all of these realities. And then you have your day-to-day responsibilities. So what's left for creativity, I found that like what's left for creativity, it's really challenging. So I'm glad that you are talking about this, all of this, because I think it's easy to feel like, oh, you know, I'm home. What you're saying, like I'm home, I'm in front of the computer, and you see these Instagram stories are like people, I'm going to get fitter than I've ever been. I'm going to have all these, like, I'm going to meditate every day and do yoga. And like, that is not the reality for anyone that I know. So
Yeah. The only consistent thing I do is sleep. That's
yes.
like, that's the one thing I check off every day. I slept.
Good. It's so good for you. I also want to ask, so I asked, what's the hardest part? And then I always like to know what's been the most rewarding part so far?
The most rewarding part is by far reading and rereading the stories and really sitting with them. And really, you were saying you got chills, like I get chills, like, oh my gosh, this person shared this. These are such deeply personal, powerful stories. And so it is an honor to be able to put them all together and share them. And so that has been most rewarding. I'm working with a wonderful designer, Carolyn Singh, who is making it look really cool. So that like, it's nice to have help in terms of the packaging of it. And so it's really fun to see what she's done. The photographer who did our cover star, Kelly Marshall, has taken such beautiful photographs. So just that's really fun. Like it's nice to see other people's work. Basically, that's the most satisfying thing, to engage with other people's work and to see it all come together is deeply satisfying and really exciting.
Yes, beautiful. I can only imagine how it must feel.
Yeah.
I want to make sure we have time to ask. We have a few questions here.
Sure.
So let's actually start with this one, like pandemic related. What's your idea of an easy, I don't really want to cook tonight meal because we got to eat? What are you going to in this pandemic, like the queen of cooking solo? Tell us.
Okay. What am I going to eat I might make like, I'll show my book. This is Cooking Solo.
Yay.
I have a couple of soups that are kind of really easy, like a roasted carrot soup. I have, yeah, a soup is pretty easy because like I just cook I think it's the carrot soup I'm thinking of. I cook the carrots, I put them in the blend. There are other ingredients, but it's literally well under 10 ingredients. It might be 6 ingredients. They all go in a blender, blend, plus toast, or like if you have some cheese, bread, cheese, soup. I'll be really honest too, like keeping it 100% real. Cooking fatigue is real. Like I want everybody to buy Cooking Solo, but I have been tired. So I like after I got over my like initial paranoia about going out or like buying food or whatever that wasn't in a grocery store, I started doing a lot of takeout because cooking 3 times a day is exhausting.
Yes.
And I love to cook and I find it exhausting. So that's the other alternative. Support a restaurant.
Absolutely. Like, yes. And I was hearing today, like, if you can order directly from the restaurant, because like
Yeah.
Uber Eats and company take a lot of money from the restaurants. So
I always order directly. Yeah.
yes. So super easy and comforting soup, or order takeout, support your favorite restaurants.
Yeah.
Love it. Okay. Next question. Very excited about For the Culture. What's the outlook on when we get to read all these amazing stories?
Okay. So fingers crossed, the 3rd week in January, it should be coming out, like printed, available to be mailed.
Yes.
Yeah. So January 2021.
Okay, awesome. And then Molly Gorin extends on that question. Is there a way to pre-order?
No, it'll just, yeah. I'm figuring out so many things and I'm like, some things I'm not going to figure out in time. So just, yeah, it'll be on the website.
No worries. And actually, speaking of which, I'm wondering, can you drop into the chat really quickly where people can find For the Culture, where they can find you? Where are you on Instagram? Tell us all.
Totally. Okay, totally. I will put that into the chat. I always have to, I shouldn't say this, but I always have to like double check the website because I'm like, yeah, it's for the,
I was just
like,
do that for
different
you,
than it.
Clancy, so that you don't have to, but
Okay, great.
Oh yeah, thank you.
I'll do it for
Hurrah.
you. Yeah. Yeah. This has been so much fun.
Thank you so much. This has been really fun. Thank you, Olaiya. This was like, you have great questions and I'm enjoying seeing your face.
Thank you. Yeah, I love seeing your face. And I love, for everybody, if you don't follow Clancy on Instagram, you got to follow her, because I love seeing just when you go out in New York City and you like when you're taking pictures of people dancing in the streets after Biden was elected, or just like cityscapes. Like, it's so fun. I love watching it.
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, my stories are just like, this is what I did today and enjoyed.
No, those are the best stories. That's what I'm enjoying the most. It's just like, how are people making it through this crazy time? Like, what are you doing? Like I don't know. That's my favorite to see.
Oh, well, thank you.
Can I ask you a question real quick before we go?
Yeah.
Are you going to do any more Reiki brunch?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, we actually did one. We did one over the summer or like beginning of fall when the weather was still like, okay.
Oh, now I remember seeing, yes, that you, yeah.
Yeah, we want to. It's getting super cold now. So I don't know how it's going to look. Well, but every now and again, there's like the random balmy day, even though it's winter. So hopefully we'll do one. I really enjoy those a lot.
It just sounds so fun. Every time you'd post about one, I'd be like, God, I need to be in New York when one of those is happening. It just looks so interesting. And
it's cool. My friend Davis is a Reiki master. And so like we chill out to his, kind of leading the group in Reiki exercises. And then afterwards I feed everybody.
And perfect.
It sounds lovely.
I miss those. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that when people can take their masks off, you're going to have a lot of uptake for those when you can see in person again. Yeah. That's what we all need right now.
Seriously.
Klancy and Olaiya, thank you so much. That was such a great conversation. And Klancy, I think if this conversation showed you anything, it's like people are really excited about this magazine and ready for you to get it going. So you'll have an audience and open arms for it when it's all ready. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you both.
Happy holidays to both of you. And thank you everyone for tuning in and joining us this evening. And everyone stay safe and healthy. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Yay.